all the spirited beings here, it is really like a deprogramming journey. So I was very programmed. So my abilities also were very numb, and they still are to a great degree. But I mean, we do some work and we denumb and we reactivate some of the dormant ability. I think this is part of the journey. So at first, the simulation aspect of this reality here was really strong for me. It was making a strong impression on me. It was enough to handle me and to keep me distracted. We go through school, which is like a reprogrammation or like a reinforcement of your programming, right? And you often, I mean, it's a very endless space, right? You have a lot of simulation around you and so on. And so I guess I had different experiences, and a lot, it's the same for a lot of us, right? We go through a lot of suffering and then we are tired to suffer. So we kind of are looking for questions, and step after step, we look more and more within, right? And we start to remember like the whole process of how it is to navigate our reality here, right? So I think my discernment has been rising. It's forever expanding. There were a lot of things that I wasn't seeing back then. And when I look to my past, they are really evident now. If I look at photos of the people I was doing workshop with, right, it's really, I see through the templating that was kind of distracting me there. And of course, it will be the same, in 5 years, I look at myself now and it will be more apparent to me, like all that is happening around me and the extreme engineering of our reality, right? Because the matrix always come with so many propositions, and especially in relationships, right? To link us to other people, because it's going to keep us distracted, because it's not the most fruitful place for us to focus on. So, there is a lot for us to kind of break through. When I was seeking self-development in my 20s, I think mid-20s, there was like a man who was giving like seminars and stuff, and he was very intellectual. Like it was an overpowering intellectual power, but in terms of, being a high frequency being or being intuitive or navigating, he was a backdrop. So now I know, but at the time I didn't know. But at the time it was sufficient to kind of keep me distracted. And I think we have a lot of dismantling to do in terms of this external authority programming I talk about, which we look for answer in the exterior because we've been programmed and it's been reinforced at school, and nowhere at school, at least in the public, like mainstream one, you're encouraged to really look within and find your own insights, right? And I find that, your own insights, they can only come when you're more or less at peace. If you walk in the woods, maybe, or sometimes when you do these 3D things like cleaning your dishes, it can also come, or taking a shower. That's because I don't know, you're not busy maybe with other things, so it can come, but you really need that space, and the matrix really doesn't want you to have that space, so you can be more with yourself. And we see also that with like the overwhelming amount of podcasts that are available, and we can easily be all the time listening and tuning to all these frequencies, and then it's less time we have with ourselves. So I've been battling myself to kind of also resist some of the, sometimes you feel maybe compelled to listen to some people because maybe you think they know better than you, or they have some key, or maybe there is a spell going on. And sometimes you realize that there is also a lot of darkness. So sometimes they get their insight in darkness, and these are not really uplifting insights. A lot of the spirited beings have like ADHD tendencies. So we're actually, it's hard for us to really meditate the way some of the new cage is teaching it. So I've been hearing it from a few friends as well, and for myself, that it's better for me to do like a moving meditation. I can, it's kind of finding my peace like this, or driving, you're not like meditating, but it can be very it can be a great space to just be with yourself. It just makes it hard, right? Every day to find the motivation, to find the balance for our mental health, and to do all the things that are good for our physical health as well. It's a lot of work. And sometimes even if you do all the right thing, you still have these episodes where you don't fully understand what's happening to you, because what's happening to you is always multidimensional. And sometimes it's related to the nighttime or to, your experience in other realm. And sometimes you don't understand why you have a longing or a nostalgia, or where suddenly what was really, you might have enjoyed your alone time a lot, but suddenly becomes like your own prison, and you don't understand what changed compared to yesterday, right? So it's very complex. And when you have to deal with it, it feels so real and so heavy. You have to process it, sometimes taking a few days to move through it. So I find it fascinating, because even if we grew wiser, but there are so many answers to still discover, and they are always to discover in the moment, right? Because maybe the answer that was working yesterday, it's not going to work this keen and not going to work today. So you have to find a new way all the time. I mean, I have a dream journal. I write a few lines. I'm consistent, but I'm lazy. Sometimes I have trouble to reread my own writing, but I put like just a few key elements. Now I have more like dreams from sometimes nighttime projects, or also very endless dreams. And I think a lot of what we find on the scene is like a literature from the simulation, right? So that you find a lot of literature, right, about astral travels and all of that. But it seems that a lot of testimonies are also kind of caught in the matrix of the astral travel, right? And sometimes they are really believing it's so real, and they astral travel and they have all these skills. But a lot of them are not real. They are not spirited beings. Usually the spirited beings, they have a very complex relationship to their nighttime, to their dream. There is a lot of dream hacking and a lot of dream seeding, where your life is engineered from your dream, right? It happened to me when I was a teenager. That's how they start, like a love interest that's gonna really ruin you, or that's what happened to me. But also just the idea of a travel, can be seeded in your consciousness during dream time, and then slowly this idea is growing, and you're like, oh yes, I'm gonna travel to that area of the world where maybe you're gonna meet your next handler. I mean, so I think there is a lot of new age also literature in astral travel, and I rarely meet good mentors, good teachers who are or good books who are really talking about that. And there is much more also in the nighttime. A lot of us have like at least like some glimpse of memories about, or some sensation. Sometimes you wake up and you have this weird impression, maybe with the cover dream that you have been left with, and you're like, and it's not a very pleasant dream, or you find a lot of people from your past in your dream time, but at the same time it feels very weird in the signatures that it holds. So I do like to study all of that, but I don't go for a lot of the literature that exists, or even I know that there are forums like that where people exchange a lot of experience, but I find it hard because you don't know if these people are real, and if it's not a lot of AI content that is being presented there. And what I notice is all these things that are made to make us feel inadequate because we don't manage to do it, or don't manage to do it like the backdrop maybe managed to do it, or so that's why I pay attention to that, right? And because then I focus more on the abilities and that we have, and if we're real, these are real abilities, not like the charlatan abilities that we also see. So I pay attention to that. I don't manage to astral travel, and these people have these awesome tales about what they do at nighttime, and I don't even manage to leave my body, right? So it might make you feel inadequate, but it's designed this way, I think, to, it's a form of gaslighting, right? You just, you know, we make you believe into this kind, like this is the reality that you, or it is how to upgrade in the game, and in fact it's really not like that, right? And that's you know, that's what I learned. You have to really find your own way outside of this discourse, and sometimes to really give them up also. When I started to look for healing, I was in my 20s. So I was looking in the wrong place, right? With the more mainstream or still alternative sometimes, but still too coded to many of the programs. So it was very on a mind level. I did a few body practice, you know, like acupuncture came a little bit later, but I find some relief with that. But it took me a few years before I find places where there was actually some healing happening. Yes, it's very complex to between what people are saying that they are doing and what they are really doing. You know, it's plus, you know, if you receive a massage from a backdrop, you're going to be depleted from your energy. I mean, it's draining in itself. Just interacting with backdrop is already draining. And I also had an experience with someone who had real abilities and who I felt he was working on my field. I felt here also in my head, but I had to stop working with him because of some of his darkness also. You know, so it was an upgrade because he's real, he's got abilities. There is some healing, but there is also some handling, and I find that a lot, right? That at some point I would feel some compression, like that everywhere was keeping me in a box. Or we find also that with the hive mind environment, right? We feel like the walls around us, and it's like we feel that we're in the cube, right? That's where we are. So that's when you want to break free. And I've been seeking for a long time. At the time I also paid a lot of money to go to different places to not learn a lot, right? Not learn more than you could have learned if you read a few books, right? But some people are really skilled in advertising, right? And if you buy online, you might not have met them in person. So when you arrive in person, you get different kind of information. Your body also gives you different kind of information. There is a lot of trickery online with, you know, you're not in the same room, so you have to be very observant to track something. You have to be very consistent in looking how they behave with other people. What's their body language? You know, is there a lot of AI in their way of speaking or in their eyes? Who are they, right? It really matters to know who you're working with. And like, ideally, you want to work with real spirited healer, right? And you have a lot of non-spirited healers out there, and a lot of corrupted also. You have a lot of corrupted real spirits as well, who might bring you some healing and might be interesting, but there will be some darkness, some engineering that is brought to your reality. So it's really hard to know also what do you want to choose? What do I want to choose for myself? Is it clear enough, or is it, you know, it's a choice, right? We might stick with some corrupted healer. I worked with a facial reflexologist, and she was vampirizing my energy, right? So I was getting some nice treatments from her, but I was also leaving her space, like feeling a little bit dissociated and drained. So I had to stop going there, though there was good part, right? But at the beginning of my journey, it was really not, I wasn't able to find the you know, but practicing discernment now, and also working with the biofeedback Energy ReMaster app, you know, you can also scan the aura of beings before going to consult them. So sometimes it saves you, you know, you can see if their aura is all compressed, or if it's all darkened. Maybe you don't want to get a massage from them or go see them. It's a very specific technology, and there are some panels that you can write yourself. There are some panels that exist that are really awesome for working on darkness or on shadow, or you know, spotting if different frequencies are in the field, like for example, if we are very coded to the hive mind, right, which we generally are. So it's interesting to see it. So these scans, you know, whether I do them for myself or for other people, or when I receive one, you know, when I want more clarity about what I'm going through, I generally re-listen to them a few times, and sometimes 1-2 months, and I still re-listen to my old scan, because there is so much information that first you might miss some layers because it's just too much, right? So and then your perspective change along with time. So there are some things that, you know, you get a different way, like one layer deeper. So I like these multidimensional, you know, either conversation or eating work, because it's not just a one time and then you're going to be bored of it. It's really something you can keep on working with, because it does contain some of the dimension. Because you can also find programming lines, right, that tie you to they are showing that you are really tied to the matrix computer systems. So ideally, we want to see them move out of the aura. Now, an interesting thing is that sometimes if you see you're in this egg-shaped form, it means you're compressed and that handling is effective around you, right? And sometimes you will feel it. You're like, oh, okay, it explains why I feel this way. Now, sometimes I scan myself. You know, I was really feeling bad and I was experiencing something, and I scanned myself and it showed up like all dark blue. Like, this is not a nice color. You don't want to see that color in your aura, because it shows that really programming is really effective in your field, and it was quite muddy and dark. And I was experiencing, I was like cornered by my own programming, like my own guilt programming. And it was kind of leading me in a situation where I was not able to say no to someone or to put my boundaries because of my guilt and how I was feeling. So it was very interesting that I scanned my aura at that time, because I have the proof, you know, and then I was like, okay, yeah, I need to move. And it gave me a mirror, right? Okay, I need to move out of this energy. It's yuck, you know, it's not nice. So it also gave me clue, and you know, sometimes you don't process everything at the same time. So, and the light blue can be new energies coming. So when we see that color, especially if I do a few aura scan, you know, to track the progress, you can also track if the person's field is receiving the frequencies or not, right? And if you see that light blue, it's a very good sign. It's like, oh, new energy coming your way. So you kind of adjusting to all the new balancing frequency that you just receive, and it's a sign that, you know, there is openness in the field, and very encouraging, right? So yeah, there are lots of things, and it's very fascinating, and how the colors are going to show, and where is it close to the body, where, you know, sometimes you see actually programming being beamed around the head, right? Like sometimes, you know, it can be V2K, you can be remotely, you know, monitored, and they can send you some kind of, you know, repeated negative core belief to reinforce your programming. You know, you're a bad person, and, you know, you're never going to succeed anything in your life, which we all have to deal with that, right? So this is a complex reality we are in, where we need a lot of strength to remember all the positive core belief and what we want to manifest and work on all that is imprinted in us. Sometimes I go through this period where I feel like, you know, it's been repeated and repeated. I've got a lot of that to sabotage relationships sometimes. And it plays also on all that is also installed in you, right? And I can feel the frequency and how, you know, my mind is trying to like resist the pressure of that, like being constantly, and I feel it's really constant, right? Then I've got my ear ringing, like most of us, right? From time to time, beam at my left or on my right. So my implants, I try to pay attention when it's going on. Sometimes I feel bad after 1 hour after it happened, or sometimes I've got body things like my blood sugar dropping, or suddenly I feel weak, or I always pay attention. But I think, which I didn't do, but sometimes I try to remind myself to do, is the best thing would be to keep a journal about it, and when it manifests, and to try to see some correlation with that. But I feel it's very much alive, for spirited being. It's something we have to deal with. It's not just the targeted individual community. It's every single, like every spirited beings, and some of them I have no idea about the targeted individual communities and so on. And so it depends where we are, where we focus, but we all have to deal with extremely thick programming, right? And to find our way to manifest from it. So it can be really frustrating to keep on manifesting, like many, for example, abandonment issues, right? Or pre-programmed abandonment that you will manifest in your relationships, or sabotage is another one, right? You like, let's sabotage this collaboration, and you also have to deal with some program parts in you who are in charge of sabotaging yourself, right? So it's not only exterior, you also have to deal with like all this software that are installed in you, and that you learn to know better, right? Because then you can manage them better, and you can overcome the writing of the software sometimes, right? And then you can build a more successful life for yourself, which I think we are all trying to do, with some trials and errors. Some years are better than others. Sometimes the energy is more supportive than others. Sometimes we have like hard chapters to go through, if we have some losses or some grief to process, right? And we need to gather our courage again to come back and try again, but also remember that we are also all where we are upgrading, right? And all that we have learned, and a part of it stay with us despite the fact that they are memory wiping us, and that they are really trying hard to erase our progress. Sometimes I listen to things, or I read things that I written like 1-2 years ago, and I feel that it's been erased from my memory. I'm like, I can relearn from myself sometimes, which is nice. And I do re-listen to some of the things I record, because it's a nice way to remember something, to remember what state you were in, and also to self-teach yourself, right? Cannot do the things that I was doing, like studying as I was studying when I was 18 or so. Like, in school they train a lot the photographic memory, right? But it's also, I think, because they have a use for it in the project, right? And I used to have like a good photographic memory, which I cannot do. They're still there, because once I deleted a lot of names, and I was trying to remember them, and they were all coming back, right? Sometimes beings I didn't even know, I knew their last name, and it was all coming back. So it is all stored somewhere, but yes, it's a matter of finding a way to access it. We have many dormant abilities, and sometimes if we don't have a use for them, they kind of become also maybe lazy or take another form, right? So they want your abilities repressed, right? And they also don't want you to trust in your abilities, because the more you trust what you experience, with yourself, the more you're gonna have discernment, so you're being heavily gaslit, and you have all this pressure around you telling you what you see is not there. So it's an extreme form of being gaslit, right? Where we tell you your reality is not how you are experiencing it. So, and then it's a journey to kind of, and I was thinking, like I think we all had that, like telepathy, you could read people's mind, but were you really trusting what you were reading? In the past, I wasn't like, I was just feeling an unease because I could read some things in the mind, but I was not consciously knowing that that's what I was doing, because no one taught me that, or I wasn't sure I had abilities, because of the heaviness of the 3D all around us, and how school encourages us to look a certain way and learn a certain way and behave a certain way. And so I think it takes time, right? You need time to learn how to re-navigate your own abilities and train them as well, and rise your frequency. And sometimes it comes with denumbing the body, right, or doing some specific healing, right, and it's going to be different for any of us, but that way you can and there is a stage where also you trust more what you don't dismiss it. They really encourage you to dismiss it, so you lose a lot of time when you dismiss, because you need like 3 times a proof, right, where sometimes one time the proof is enough for you to know that this person doesn't deserve your trust, for example, right, or that this is a red flag, and you don't need 3 red flags. You can trust that first red flag that is a major one, and it tells you enough about what you need to know. It's designed a certain way to create suffering, because suffering is a harvest, right? I think you can limit some suffering, especially with your discernment. And I think that's very useful to be working on doing that, right? You can like say no to many of the matrix propositions before they hook too deep into your field, right? A good example is romance, right? And all these engineer relationships. Well, once you have experienced a few of them, and that you have learned some things, and you can be wise and say, yes, no more for me. I know how it works. And you can notice better, where it hooks in you, how I think for me, in conversations or on exchange, I feel very much when there is a manipulative aspect to it. Sometimes I need to feedback with myself after, especially if it's people with abilities who are able to kind of access your brainwaves and stuff like that. But yeah, you can really, how you feel with people is also going to tell you now, are you listening to that? It's a matter sometimes of listening to ourselves, or not finding excuse also for what we witness around us, and all of that. But yeah, I think it's to encourage or to discourage the successfulness of shadow work, right? Because there is this constant culture around, and shadow work is difficult because there is this deflection is constantly encouraged, and it's built a certain way with mind control, where if you suffer, you're encouraged to put the blame on someone else, because it kind of gives you a relief temporary of feeling that pain, but is encouraged by the matrix heavily. So while you are projecting and deflecting, you're not really understanding where it plugs in you and your own shadow, and how it's overruling you sometimes, because shadow work is the real threat also of the matrix, because that's a main way where how the gamekeepers like to play their game, right, by this constant deflection and vision. That's also a reason why there is so much encouragement in programming to project the blame outside. It's a way of never finding the answer inside.